This video isn't a hit piece on Zoron Mamdani. You've probably seen enough of those by now. There's no need to rehash the obvious. This video is about how, I feel like as with most issues nowadays, everyone is missing the bigger picture in all this. Everyone, especially on the right, seem to be talking the same shit about, oh, he's a Muslim, he's not even American, he's an Islamo-communist, or whatever names you can think of. And maybe all of those are true. Maybe all of those are valid concerns. Who am I to say? I don't know the guy. But the real question we need to be asking is why? Why are people voting for him? How did he become so popular in the first place? And why have people become so desperate to the point where they're actually turning towards seemingly radical solutions like socialism? Because here's the thing that no one's saying. If life was stable, if people had meaningful jobs, if people could just afford to live decently, especially in a city like New York, if the economy was truly fair and reasonable and income inequality wasn't through the roof, if the average person in this country had some sort of hope in our future and actually trusted our government and the institutions, then I don't think anyone would even entertain the idea of something like socialism, even if it's labeled as democratic socialism. Because really no one in a society that's functioning the way it should randomly wakes up one day and says, yeah, we should give the government more power. The call for anything even entertaining the idea of socialism only happens when people lose hope and trust in everything else. Namely, like I said, the government and institutions that have instituted failed policy after failed policy for decades that have led people to this desperate point where they're voting in someone like Mamdani. Because when, for example, rent is way too high, groceries are completely unaffordable, when healthcare is just a complete scam, people start looking for anything that sounds like a solution. It's the perfect storm for people to maybe think, what if socialism is worth a shot? And that's the bigger picture of what's happening in New York City right now. And as much as people like to attack Zoran Mamdani as an individual, he's not the cause of all this. He's only the symptom. If you've ever actually lived in New York City, you already know that it's genuinely a difficult place to survive nowadays. That's why they even have that cheesy quote, if you can make it in New York, then you can make it anywhere. But in 2025, the cost of living has gone from high to just completely unhinged. If you didn't know, the average one-bedroom apartment in Manhattan is $4,000 or $5,000 per month. That's literally most people's salaries just spent on rent. Even in less expensive neighborhoods like Brooklyn or Queens, it's still multiple thousands of dollars for basically just a glorified walk-in closet. Have you seen these apartments? They're tiny. And the worst part is that a lot of these people who are struggling to pay rent and just afford cost of living in general, they did everything right. They worked hard, they got the college degree, maybe they even have a full-time job and a side hustle, but they're still barely scraping together enough to get by. I hear stories of people working 50, 60 hours a week and splitting rooms with strangers even though they're full-grown adults. And as you probably know by now, it's not as simple as people are lazy. For one reason or another, many of which I've talked about in previous videos, the economy is totally fucked and the working class is being exploited. Not only are jobs being lost to mass immigration and outsourcing, but also to AI in the near future. And plenty of other reasons that we can get into as well. But I'll save that for later. I'll save that for a different time. But anyways, after paying for rent, utilities, and other basic necessities, our money just isn't going a long way nowadays, especially in a city like New York. Groceries and just food are completely off the charts. I can say this because I've been to New York a few times over the past few years. A hot dog from a street vendor 10 years ago was like $2 or $3 at most. Nowadays it's $5 or $6 for a single hot dog. If you go to one of the halal carts, a chicken over rice is like $13. It's absolutely insane. And even though those are just a few very niche examples that I remember from my time in New York City, I'm sure it's like this all across the board for all kinds of foods and even just consumer goods in general. So in all, it just feels like these kinds of small purchases that people used to take for granted and not think too much of in the moment now feel like financial risks almost. But rent and grocery/food are only a small part of the equation. We haven't even gotten to some of the more underlying stuff yet. Millions of people who were told to go to college, even though nowadays AI might end up taking their job, are buried under thousands, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loan debt, stuck paying off degrees that might not get them anywhere. I know, and you probably also know, people who worked hard and got college degrees and still either can't find a job or are working in jobs that didn't even require a degree to begin with. What's even worse is that people are drowning in medical bills too. Medical debt is the single biggest cause of bankruptcy in this country. One trip to urgent care might cost, half your paycheck, and a trip to the ER for maybe an accident or just something out of your control might leave you in debt for years and years, and again, possibly even bankrupt you. So just with all these financial burdens looming over not only the entire population, really, but especially in a city like New York, there's just this quiet sense of exhaustion and even nihilism to some extent. If you've ever been on a New York City subway in the recent years, everyone just looks burnt out, anxious, disconnected, almost like zombies walking through life on survival mode. The city is not in a good state, and that's exactly where someone like Zohran Mamdani comes in. Because people are starting to get a sense more and more nowadays that both parties have failed them for decades. The establishment politicians running America's most iconic city haven't really done much to objectively improve people's lives there. So at some point, people stop believing in them. They don't want another Cuomo or what's the other guy, Curtis Sliwa, who have been in the political game for years. They want something new. People simply feel like they have nothing to lose and naturally start turning towards more radical sounding ideas. Not necessarily out of ideology, most people don't even know what socialism or Marxism actually is, or the historical impacts of these systems all over the world, but it's purely out of desperation. And honestly, you can't even blame them. But that's what's happening in New York right now. People look at their lives, the rent, the prices, the crime and corruption, and psychologically, the natural thought is, well, what's the worst that can happen if we try something new? People who have been failed by the capitalist system will turn to socialism. It's really that simple. It's nothing more than basic human psychology at work. And this nothing to lose mentality is even more amplified when you actually look at who's been running New York City for the past few terms. For example, Eric Adams, the previous mayor. He's involved in some of the most egregious political scandals in recent memory. If you don't know about those, you can look them up. But he was literally accused of taking donations from foreign countries, all while his own city continues to spiral into desperation. So when someone like Zoran Mamdani comes along and he's young, he's idealistic, he's saying all the right things, talking about things like equality, dignity, cheap rent, lowering grocery prices, it hits home for people. And it's only natural to think, you know what, that actually sounds better than the current shit show we have now, run by a totally corrupt and incompetent mayor. Mamdani and the introduction of socialism into America aren't necessarily the problem itself, they're the symptom of deeper problems. People aren't embracing socialism because they're naturally radical, they're embracing it because our current system has radicalized them. But when it comes to Zoran Mandani, and this is something that I don't really hear many people saying, socialism isn't the whole story actually. There's an entire other elephant in the room that we have to cover. And surprise, surprise, that elephant in the room just so happens to be a certain country in the Middle East. Our closest ally, and the one that we're giving billions of our tax dollars to every single year. Because if you remember, Zoran Mamdani came out of nowhere seemingly. The real reason why he gained so much popularity overnight was because of his position on that country. This guy went viral for his response to the question of, what's the first place you'd visit when you become the mayor of New York City? Every single one of the other candidates, for some reason, said that they would visit Israel, as if it's their priority as the mayor of an American city to visit a foreign country all the way across the ocean. What Zoran said was that he would spend time as the mayor of New York, actually in New York, helping the communities on the ground in New York, in America, instead of visiting a foreign country across the globe that's also doing very bad things right now. And like him or not, that's exactly what it should be. Even for the people on the right, we can agree that his answer to that specific question is the America First position. the only America First position. Because again, why would the mayor of an American city have the obligation to visit a foreign country? It's not even like he's in the federal government or that he's a diplomat. He's literally a mayor of an American city. And I think he even said that if he cares about the Jewish population, he's gonna help the Jewish people in America, not Israel. And you really have to think about it. If the mayor of an American city is somehow expected to have the obligation to kiss the wall of a foreign country, what are we, a vassal state? And let's face it, the reason why Zohran Mamdani is gaining so much support is because of his hardline position on that certain country. As in the past few years, and especially this year, I feel like, many people are starting to ask more questions and bring up more conversations about our alliance with them. A lot of people are realizing that our government is giving billions and billions of dollars to this small nation across the ocean, doing very bad things with that money. A lot of people are realizing that the lobbying group of that certain country has become a major influence, an overwhelming influence, in both political parties in America. That shapes America's foreign policy. A lot of people are realizing that many of the wars and military engagements we've been involved with in the Middle East may or may not have primarily been for the purpose of advancing that certain country's interests. And a lot of people are even beginning to think that there are a lot of prominent, powerful voices in the government, the media, and the financial institutions that are somehow more loyal to this small nation across the ocean than to America itself. And people have gotten fatigued of it. People have gotten tired, especially young people in Gen Z, whether on the left or the right. And can you really blame people for being tired of having our foreign policy influenced by a country halfway across the world and having our hard-earned tax dollars go towards funding their war of, you know what's going on there, I don't want to say the specific word. And that's why a lot of people like Zoran Mamdani as well. Like it or not, it seems like a lot of people are willing to overlook the socialism just because they're so angry and radicalized about this specific issue. Because he's one of the only politicians in the country that is going hard at it. And honestly, that's the real reason why both the Republicans and Democrats are teaming up to work against him, pulling out literally every trick in the book to try and defeat him, even a Trump endorsement of Cuomo. Anyways, again, to reiterate, I'm someone who obviously is independent, but I find myself leaning more towards the right nowadays, even though I don't like Zoran Mamdani, even though I personally wouldn't vote for him. I'm not going to be the one who's name-calling and throwing smears at people like him or even other so-called socialists, because they're not necessarily the villains. They're the warning. They're the symptom. Zoran Mandani is a sign that the system is breaking down, that people are desperate, and that if something doesn't change fast within the bounds of what we have now, these radical socialist ideas may genuinely influence the country in the coming years. Again, whether you agree or disagree with his policies is beyond the point. What matters is why people are willing to listen to these ideas in the first place. Again, if you live in a city where most of your paycheck goes to rent and the rest of it is going towards groceries and food, you're hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt due to student loans or medical bills, that's when people start to think, what if socialism is the answer? Our government is literally sending billions of dollars overseas to fund foreign wars and foreign governments, all at the same time that, if you've ever been to New York, you'll see hundreds of homeless veterans outside on any given walk on any given day, sleeping on the streets in the fucking cold. This is the world that people are living in. This is the city that Zoran Mamdani might take power in. And these are the problems that socialism claims to help solve. That's why people are voting for him. Even though I and many people also believe that socialism sounds good in theory, but is in reality a Trojan horse, and could lead down a very slippery slope to a dark place. So, if you're someone who's on the right, or someone like myself, an independent who doesn't think socialism is the answer and knows about the historical and worldwide consequences of this dangerous ideology, this is a real and serious warning that if something doesn't change, more people are going to look towards socialism as the answer. I don't know what the answer is. Obviously, both parties suck nowadays and are getting more and more polarized. I did talk about a vague idea of a possible solution in my previous video if you want to go and check that out, but the main point still stands that it's Republicans and Democrats who have failed us for years, leaving the average American feeling invisible and broken. And that's when they start to look for anyone who promises to listen, even if it's coming from a so-called socialist. Because at the very least, Zohran Mamdani is someone who is promising to listen, whether it ends up being true or not. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. This was a little bit of a different video covering a very specific current event instead of more of a general societal critique or whatever you want to call it. But let me know if you want me to cover more of just news and current events from what I think is a unique perspective that I at least am not hearing anywhere else on the internet. Anyways, for anyone new here or just anyone who might not know, I choose not to take any sponsorships on these videos. That's why you don't see any in the middle of it. I also, don't sell you online courses or gimmicky affiliate marketing links in the description and all of that kind of stuff that most other influencers do nowadays. I'm trying to keep this channel 100% as real as possible. But as a result, I don't make that much money from it. So really the only way that I can continue doing this YouTube thing long term is with your support. Thank you so much to everyone who already supports the channel on Patreon and channel memberships. You guys are literally the best. I really appreciate it. And obviously, if you'd like to support the channel, those are the two ways to do it, through Patreon or channel memberships. On Patreon, you can message me one-on-one, talk to me about literally anything. You'll also get access to the community chat where you can talk to each other and share any interesting ideas you might have. I also drop in there from time to time to give channel updates. And of course, there's also a lot of bonus content as well. So there's so much stuff on there, literally for less than the cost of a cup of coffee nowadays. So Patreon is really great and everything goes towards keeping this channel going. Or if you don't want to go through the hassle of getting on a different platform, as I know many people have expressed, you can support the channel right here on YouTube through channel memberships. With that, you can get access to my full archive of videos, including a lot of previous videos that were a bit more personal or in-depth or even cringe that I ended up making private. But if you're a channel member, you can watch all of those, which is tons of extra content, plus just always having access to any videos that I might end up making private in the future. Also, full-length live stream replays. I used to do a lot of those, and I'm thinking about maybe bringing the live streams back either next year or at a subscriber milestone, maybe at 75k or 100k. We'll see about that. And of course, gotta plug the second channel as always, where I go on pretty cool adventures, hiking, camping, just anything outdoors, visiting really cool places around Arizona and the Southwest. Just anytime I take a trip, I'll post it on there. It's kind of like a personal vlog, and I also try to give some fun facts about the places I visit and try to make it so that you guys can learn something new from those videos, so check that out as well. Anyways, that's about it for now. My next video, by the way, is going to be absolutely huge and could get me in a lot of trouble, honestly. Anyone who's watched up to this point, you're a real one. Please remember, if anything happens to me, I'm young, happy, healthy, I love my life,